Saddle up and strap in, guys, because I'm taking you on a 20-year journey of my riding life. A history lesson, if you will. There's highs, there's lows, there's small ponies, there's slightly bigger ponies, there's a lack of video footage because I'm old and video cameras probably weren't even invented when I started riding. Either way, it's going to be fun and you can see how my love for horses began. So let's journey back and meet my first ever pony, Barney. So when I first met Barney, it was because he was actually my best friend's pony. So in the year 2000, I used to go for the occasional lesson with her mum. I was just over 3.5 at this point, and we realised pretty quickly that I was really allergic to horses. So that somewhat set me back, I guess, but I persevered through it and had a lot of antihistamine, and I actually got through the allergies, but I'm not, saying that you guys should do that. Definitely go to the doctors, because I did. Anyway, we ended up buying Barney in about February of 2001. He was a Welsh A, I think he was 7 at that time, and about 11.1, 11.2, make up your own minds. This is the first picture I can find with me on him. The date is completely off, so ignore that. We actually kept Barney at the village church for the first couple of months of owning him, which was just super cute. I mean, how wholesome is that? But then we did find a livery yard to move him to. We had no transport, so poor mum had to walk him 3 miles down the road to get him there. But then we were set to go, and I actually ended up joining the pony club. I looked really cool, which is probably why I decided to continue doing horses, because look at that face, I was going places. So I started going to loads of pony club rallies. I'm about 4.5 here. And as you can see, my natural talent just shone through. The positions, just like that, very gentle with my hands and just really natural on a horse. You'll see here Hobbit's wearing a top saying lucky. I think that's because she's lucky to have such a talented young daughter on her pony. Look at that, beautiful hands. That year I went to my first ever pony club camp. I know what you're thinking, wow, doesn't Hobbit look young, but why didn't she buy me a jacket that actually fitted me? Despite looking like I was wearing my dad's jacket, I had an amazing time, as did Barney. I won my first ever rosette, probably just for turning up, but it definitely sparked this desire to compete, which I still have today. That tiny child there is actually my older brother Isaac. I'm now aware he looks much better on a horse than I did, but judging by my face, on some level I think I knew back then. He has a key part to play in my riding story because, like any sibling, he decided he wanted to do what I do, which meant we bought another pony. Enter Tuna. She was a 16-year-old 12.2 Welsh Section B, and she had been quite a good jumping pony, meaning she was quite whizzy. Because of this, on one of Isaac's first rides, she actually did a cat leap and took off across the fields, which, safe to say, really put him off of her. Anyway, I fell in love with her and started riding her a lot, although Isaac did still ride her a bit, but he wasn't very keen. Going into winter, we were having more and more lessons, and I was riding Tuna and Barney quite a lot, which I think really helped my riding. We also started competing a little bit. Here's me jumping a massive fence at my first ever competition. My toes look horrendous, but of course here's Isaac looking way better than me whilst riding Tuna. We also started going to some pony club rallies together. I was still on the lead rein clearly, but I look fantastic, plus mum's rocking her bootleg jeans, so it's happy days. Here's a picture of Isaac looking absolutely epic, and a comparison of the photos that Dad used to get of me. Yep, there we go, laugh it up. Despite resembling a small dumpling whilst being sat on a pony, while my less interested brother was naturally way more talented than I was still absolutely obsessed with them. However, Tuna and Barney were quickly becoming members of the family. As you can see here, this is a prime example of a Christmas at the Elphick household. We'd go down to the yard dressed up in Christmassy outfits to try and get a Christmas card. Even my older brother Sam would get involved, and here he is, sat on Barney looking like an absolute cowboy. This is actually the first ever Christmas card we got with the ponies, and there were many more to come after that. In early 2002 we sadly had to sell Barney as I'd outgrown him. I was so sad, but luckily I had Tuna there to move on to full time. Isaac also got another pony called Amber, who was basically the same as Tuna, but she had a star. That spring I went to my first ever hunter trial. I was absolutely petrified as I was still only 6 and I thought it looked really big. Because of that we managed to find a lovely girl in the pony club to take Tuna around first, so I could see that she could actually do it. I then got on and tried to go round, but I was still so scared and ended up missing out 3 of the fences. Despite this, I actually won the best under 8 member. Don't be fooled, it wasn't because I was the best, it was because I was the only underage child in the class. That year my confidence grew. I started going on sponsored rides with lots of jumping, and I also did a pony club camp where I accidentally got sent home because Tuna bolted with me. Fast forward to the winter and shock horror, I'm dressed up as Mrs. Claus again. Jumping was still my #1 thing to do. Here I am stealing Amber, Isaac's pony, so I could get a bit more competition experience in. Coming out of that winter, I was starting to jump a little bit bigger. As you can see here, this fence is probably 120, 125 give or take. That winter was amazing for me and I felt like I got so much more confident in my jumping. So much so that I went back to that same hunter trial and this time I jumped the whole course. We actually won fair and square, doing a lovely clear round. That summer was full of competing and I couldn't have had a better pony to do it on. I did my first ever dressage test that year and although I loved it, jumping was still my #1 love. So much so I stole my friend's pony whenever I could. She was a little bit nervous so didn't like jumping, so if I could ever get on board I would, like I am here. You can see Hobbit with her hands on her hips here. I imagine that's because she's wondering why my position is so terrible and why I haven't improved in the 3 years of riding. Fast forward a little bit and I'm now 8 years old and it's 2004. It's safe to say if anything my position's actually gotten worse. This was my first 13-2 and I got her on loan through my instructor. She was called Lace, I think she was about 12 years old and she'd been a show pony before but she was just absolutely epic. Isaac also got a new pony called Cassie. She too was 13-2 and I think she'd been a jumping pony. She was quite young, I think 6 or 7 when we got her, but a really lovely pony who played a big part in both of our lives. Isaac and I had a great year competing our 2 ponies. Here we are doing a pairs hunter trial where, again, he looks a lot better than I do. Lace was such a good pony for me to learn to ride on because she was your classic hot-headed chestnut mare. At this point, Tuna was getting on a bit and she actually went on loan to a really lovely family so she could start to take it easier in life. In 2006, I started riding Cassie a lot more as well as riding Lace. At the end of the year, Lace actually went back to her old owners and I moved on to Cassie full time for 2007. We also bought our first plot of land in 2006, which was really exciting. We started building the stables in 2007 and put up a menage as well. It was amazing to have a place to call our own, but I think that's when the pony obsession grew even more because suddenly we could have as many as we wanted. Cassie and I were also selected to be on the area pony club team in 2007. This was a massive deal for me because although I'd been on teams before, I hadn't been on the national ones. It started at 90 centimetres, which felt absolutely huge, and it went up to 1 metre in the final rounds, although we didn't get that far. But I did jump the 90 and the 95, just having 4 faults in the second round. Isaac also got a new pony called Miffy that year. Again, she came to us on loan and she was 14-3 Welsh Section D. She had done a bit of everything in life, and although she was lovely, she was your classic Welsh pony, so she was quite difficult on the ground, but she was absolutely amazing and we both had so much fun on her. So now we're in 2008, which I call the year of the horse because we seemed to get so many new horses and ponies that year. I think because we had the land, we just kind of went a bit crazy. So this was my first ever 14-2. She was called Misha. She came to me on loan and she was a really lovely pony. She'd done a bit of everything. I did my first ever area dressage, as you can see there, and we actually came 5th together, which was amazing. And we did lots of competing together too. So as well as Misha, I think this is the year when my sort of project pony obsession grew. Mum and I actually bought these 2 ponies. They were called Bobby and Jonty. Bobby was the darker pony and Jonty's the lighter one. Bobby I think was 5 and he had been broken, whereas Jonty was pretty much completely untouched. He was just about to turn 4. So I produced Bobby, as you can see here. He was such a sweet, easy pony and he was kind of the perfect first young pony for me to do. We sold him on pretty quickly because he was just really lovely. I had some help breaking Jonty in, but he was actually, again, a really easy pony to do. They were both Welsh Section Bs, and I think they're about 12-2 to 13 hands. So I kept Jonty for quite a while. It was probably nearly a year, and I did quite a lot of sort of competing and jumping with him and schooled him up. He was probably the more talented of the 2. As you can see, he was just really cute and honest, and eventually we sold him on to make a bit of money so I could buy the next project. We also had this little pony called Little Lace, as you can see here, that year. We didn't have her very long. She was a bit cheeky, but again, I did a bit of schooling with her and we sold her on too. Nearing the end of 2008, once we had sold a few ponies, we bought my first ever 14-2, which is Ace. You guys might remember him or know of him because I actually still have him now. He's coming up for 30 now, but I think he was about 16 when we bought him. He was such a legend. You can see here, I think we'd had him a couple of weeks, and that's actually a friend of mine from the pony club riding him, and I was riding Cassie to go on our first ever hunt. However, Cassie was really naughty. I ended up having a really horrific fall on a bridge that day, and I had to swap on to the bigger pony because he was the better behaved one. Although he has been a pony of a lifetime for me, he wasn't the easiest at the start. For the first 3 weeks he used to buck me off every single time we jumped. Mum was convinced she'd overhorsed me and we almost got rid of him, but luckily we managed to pull through and we built up a really good relationship together. That year was full of competing. Isaac had started to lose interest in horses, which meant I had 4 horses to ride. There was Cassie, Miffy, Misha and Ace, as well as any other projects that we happened to have in. This might have been a lot, but I absolutely loved it, and I think it's why I enjoy having so many horses now, because I just love being busy and riding different types. I did my first ever one-day event that year, and I think I did it on Misha, Cassie and Ace. I didn't do it on Miffy because Isaac was still sort of half-heartedly riding, and I think he'd get a bit annoyed at me competing his pony too much. I think it was those sunny days spent with my friends that made me want to do eventing as my main discipline. Riding Ace was also amazing for me because he'd been so well schooled in the past that it meant I started to really enjoy my dressage, and we were also doing quite well at the eventing. In November that year, I went to my first ever horse auction at the New Forest sales. I took a day off school and we went to buy 2 ponies, which was possibly the best day ever. I think that's why I still get so excited about auctions now. We bought Fern, who was the older grey pony, and Bramble, who was the younger little bay one. I think Fern was £120 and Bramble was about £50, so I was just in awe of how you could buy ponies so cheaply. Bramble was only 1 and Fern was 2, so they were definitely long-term projects. They were also completely feral and untouched, although they had wrestled a head collar onto Fern, as you can see there. This meant there was loads of groundwork to be done to get them to come round, but this wasn't hard at all. In the years to come, I ended up breaking both of these ponies, and we sold them on to lovely homes. Fern and Bramble were the first 2 ponies that I broke by myself. I was so lucky to have that experience at such a young age, and I think it's really set me up for what I do today. As you can see, there were some teething issues. My lunging skills weren't fantastic back then, but we did always make it through, and they were really genuine, lovely ponies for me to be able to learn with. Like I said, I think it's really helped me working with young horses today, because from a very young age it was instilled into me to have patience with your horses and just know how to deal with young horses and different horses. So I believe we're in 2010 here guys, but I'm starting to get quite muddled up with my dates and when I got various horses. So from now on I'm going to try and take you through some of the horses chronologically, but realistically I'm not going to know the exact date it was. You can kind of tell how old I am just by looking at my size on the horse. But 2010 I was mainly competing Ace and Miffy. Misha actually went back to her old owners. Isaac had also completely given up riding at this point too, so that's why I kind of took up the reins on Miffy. I had a great couple of years competing these 2, doing all of the pony club teams. I went up to intermediate teams with them both, so that's a metre, and then I think it gets a bit bigger in the show jumping. I also went to the pony club championships on several occasions, which was just incredible. Honestly, they were such happy days and I wouldn't change any of that for the world. I also got the opportunity to ride at Hickstead with Miffy, which was absolutely amazing, and it was my first time competing at a big venue. As much as I loved show jumping at Hickstead, eventing was still my true love. After Miffy and I did a few pony club championships together, after Ace did an injury, we decided that we'd start to do some unaffiliated BE courses with her. She also did a 2-day event, which you're looking at now, where she actually got placed. So this was my first time going around Astonley Walls. I don't know the date, I'm sorry, but I think it was probably 2010 or 2011. As soon as I went round that course clear, I knew that I wanted to join British eventing one day. Whilst eventing was still my true love, I still had my passion for producing ponies. It was around that time that we actually got 2 more chestnuts. So there was Precious, but I called him P because I could not stand that name for a boy horse. He was, I think, about 8 and he'd been a show pony but hadn't ever jumped before, so I produced him to do a bit of jumping. And we also bought Abby from the same place at the same time. She was just 4 when we bought her, so we kept her a little bit longer, but I produced her a bit and then we eventually sold her to a really lovely home. I was starting to really enjoy producing these ponies. It was amazing to make a profit on them, but also I just really liked working with different horses and having the opportunity to ride lots of different horses, so I think that's what really hooked me in. Whilst we're on the topic of project ponies, I found 3 little cobby types that I produced, I think around the same kind of time. Sorry about these photos being distorted, guys, I don't know how to change it. So this was Alice. We bought her as a 3-year-old and backed her and broke her. We ended up keeping her a couple of years because she was just the sweetest pony ever, and then sold her on to a lovely family. Next there was Girl Bob, who I actually produced for a friend of mine, so we didn't own her, but she was at my yard for a couple of months. She was really sweet and I did some dressage and a little bit of working hunter with her, and then sold her on too. Finally there's Ben, who was just the cutest pony ever. Mum actually rescued him from a rather sorry state, shall we say. I was currently working for an event rider at the time. Mum messaged me to say she picked up a new horse. It's safe to say he wasn't exactly what I was expecting, especially after I'd been working with a bunch of 5-star horses that week. He was really nervous, bless him, and he had this habit of bolting off whenever someone got on him. He'd clearly been really badly broken. But we got there with him, and I actually did a little bit of eventing with him. He even came second at an event, which was so sweet, and he just really loved me. We had such a good relationship together. We sold him to a lovely lady who went on to do loads of stuff with him, and we still hear from him now, which is amazing. Although these last 3 obviously aren't the fanciest ponies in the world, I think it just really set me up to be able to get the best out of them. I wasn't one of those people that wouldn't ride a pony because it wasn't fancy. I literally just wanted to get on absolutely anything and everything. We also had a trip back to the New Forest sales to pick up some more project ponies. We came home with these 3, although the cute one in the middle was actually for a friend. We had Hazel and Twiggy. Hazel was the bay one and Twiggy was the chestnut. Unfortunately, Hazel didn't grow big enough, as it was hard to tell as a yearling how big she'd be. But Twiggy did, and I went on to produce her to do a few BE80s before selling her on. I think we paid 56 guineas for Twiggy at the sales, so it was really quite special to take her around a BE event when she was older. So I've been speaking about my project ponies quite a lot, but for the sake of the story we're going to jump back in time to the end of 2010 so I can introduce you to Hazy. Now she was supposed to be another project pony, but we soon realised that she was too special to just sell on straight away. We bought her from a riding school because she was too naughty for the people to ride there. She was 5 but soon to turn 6 that next year. She hadn't done much as she'd had 2 foals, but the second I rode her I knew she was going to be really special. I think these pictures show just how talented she was, and she was actually the first pony that I took BE. Around the same time we got Hazy, I was offered an opportunity that was way too good to pass up. This was the ride on an ex-intermediate event horse. His name was Bertie, he was about 16 hands, and I think he was 13 or 14 when I had him. Like I said, he'd competed up to intermediate eventing, but he was ready for a bit of a quieter life, but not quite ready to retire. I was really kindly allowed to have a year's competing on him by his very generous owner. He was amazing for showing me the ropes, and I also did my first few elementary dressage tests on him. I really enjoyed having him and Hazy because they were like polar opposites. She was obviously very green and I was teaching her the ropes, and then Bertie was doing the same for me. So this was one of the first times that Hazy went cross-country schooling. She was really bold and just took everything in her stride. For that reason, she had her BE debut in 2011. I was 14 and I think she was still 6 at the time. Hazy had some really promising results that first year doing B, considering how inexperienced she was. That's probably what made her injury even harder to stomach. Sadly, she did a suspensory ligament after just 4 events competing, and that was the end of my first ever BE season. At this point, I was even more thankful to have Bertie because he took over the reins as my main horse. As you can see, we went to Hicksted and we also did some eventing together. He was so fab for showing me the ropes, and I really enjoyed riding him. Seeing as Bertie was the only horse I had to ride at the time, people were really generous in giving me horses to ride. So this was Frosty. He was a 5-year-old gelding. I rode him for a little while, and then I also had Queenie given to me. I got her back out competing and did some pony club with her. It was really nice to actually still have loads to ride. That winter, Bertie ended up going back to his old owners and the 2 greys were sold. Again, I was left with nothing to ride. Enter Lara. So a lot of you are going to know Lara because I obviously still have her today. I bought her as a 5-year-old, she was rising 6, and she had actually done 2 BE90s that year, but not particularly well. Around the same time I got Lara was when I started working for the first international event rider. That's why those pictures were taken that you've just seen. It was so helpful to be working with her because she was absolutely amazing. She taught me so much, and Lara was quite a difficult horse and she was very different to what I was used to riding. In 2012, Lara and I joined BE and started eventing. I think we did 1 or 2 90s and then quickly progressed up to 100. She was absolutely amazing. Although her flat work and her show jumping wasn't great, she gave me such a great feel cross country and really instilled a lot of confidence into me in that discipline. The cool thing about Lara is that she's never had a cross-country fault. This really stood out in our first year eventing while I was doing some of the under 18 classes. We were actually lucky enough to be selected to ride at Wellington as part of a team. It was amazing to be selected to be part of a British eventing team, however the joys ended there as sadly Lara tied up at Wellington and I didn't get to run her cross-country. The following year, Hazy had finally recovered from her injury. We decided not to jump her for a whole year and instead we did quite a lot of flat work, hacking and the odd dressage competition. Thankfully, this patience really paid off and she came back better than ever. We started the season by doing some of the BE jump training. Amazingly, she qualified for the final at the first ever qualifier. She actually went on to win the final as well, which was fantastic. She got her picture in a magazine, which I think was the first time I'd ever been in the proper magazine. And she also won a rug, which I still use today, and it's got a lot of sentimental value. So over the next 2 years I had loads of fun competing Hazy and Lara at BE. We did loads and loads of hundreds and I did quite a few of the under 18 classes, which was super fun because it was a great way of meeting people and you got amazing coaching with it too. I had various projects during this time too, but I'm really struggling to find pictures of them. This was around the time I was doing my GCSEs though, so I think I was kind of taking it easy. I didn't want like 6 or 7 to ride. One pony we did have during this time, who I will show you a picture of in a minute once we've finished looking at these competition photos, is a mare called Jade. We bought her as a 4-year-old from a field. She was completely untouched. She was half Connie, half thoroughbred, so really nice breeding. However, there was a slight problem with Jade, and that was we found out that she was actually pregnant when we bought her, but of course we had no idea. So we were starting to break her in and then we suddenly had to stop because she was about to foal in a few weeks. She had the most gorgeous little filly foal who we called Ava. Sadly, when it came to weaning the pair, we decided to sell Jade as we just didn't have the facilities to wean them and we'd already got more than we bargained for. We bought Ava a really sweet little cobby friend called Holly, who we eventually got round to backing and then sold. Sadly, we also had to sell Ava too before I went off to university. This was honestly so sad as she's such a nice type. And it's probably one of my biggest regrets. I really wish we'd kept her because I think she could have made a lovely event horse. Back to 2014 and we had to make the heartbreaking decision to sell Hazy. Due to a change in family circumstances, we simply couldn't afford to keep her and Lara, and we knew that she'd be worth more money and also easier to sell. It was a heartbreaking decision, but it's nice to know that she's still in the same home we sold her to now. She was an amazing pony for me, and I had so much fun on her, and I'm so thankful that I had those years with her. So 2015 started out as quite a tough year, both for family reasons and the fact that Lara went badly lame after her first event. However, things did seem to look up. I got my first ever racehorse straight off the track to retrain. This was Lola. She was 5 and about 16-1, and I got her when she'd just been out of racing for 3 weeks. Although she was quite tricky, she was really sweet, and I ended up selling her to a dressage home. Despite a bit of a rough start to the year, 2015 was actually really special because it's the year that I bought Dee, and obviously you guys should all know who that is because I still have her now. She was 4 when I bought her and she'd only been sat on a couple of times. She'd come over from Ireland and she'd been bought at the Irish sales. She wasn't easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm so glad that I persevered with her as she's turned into such an incredible horse. I had to produce Dee very slowly because she was a very sensitive mare, and we later found out that she'd actually had a foal, which explained why she was so weak through her back. I then finished my A-levels and I went off travelling with my boyfriend. I came back in early 2016, and at that point Dee had really matured. I continued producing her and I started eventing her alongside Lara that year. Dee instantly took a shining to eventing, and she suddenly settled down and started to really work hard for me. I ended up joining her to BE that season too, as I was so pleased with how she was doing. Sadly, Lara actually went lame that year again, and that was when we decided to put her in foal because I was going off to university in September. I was also really lucky to be asked to ride this lovely ex-racer Sydney that year. I took him to Gatcombe to do the ROR classes, and it was really fun doing something completely different. So September rolled around pretty quickly and I was off to university in Liverpool. I was so lucky to be selected to be on the riding team there, which meant my 3 years were spent riding both up in Liverpool and back home whenever I got the chance. I started my Instagram account in the first year of university, so everything else is logged on there. I've decided I'm going to cut this video a bit short, guys, because I've realised it is so long and I'm worried that people are going to get super bored watching it. You can see in these photos that there have been plenty of new additions since I went to university. Some of them are still with me and some of them have been sold on. However, if you don't recognise any of them, you can always head over to my Instagram or scroll back through my YouTube because most of them feature and you'll be able to find out who they are. If you guys really want me to do an updated version of this and maybe go through once I went to university and the few years after that, I can do another one of these videos, so just leave a comment below if you like this one. One last thing I want to say is a massive thank you to my parents, my family and everyone who supported me. I was obviously so privileged to have this many horses growing up. Although we didn't used to spend loads of money on our horses, I know that I've been so lucky, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm not grateful for the amazing opportunities I've had. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Let me know if you've enjoyed it and if you want me to do a more recent update, but this was kind of more aimed at how I started riding and the ponies I had whilst I was growing up. I've got a really exciting video coming up very soon on this channel, guys, so make sure you watch out for that. There is a tiny hint in this video, so for the beady-eyed amongst you, you might have realised, but I'm guessing maybe not. But thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. Bye!